Wizards fans, although we got screwed in the NBA draft lottery, it didn't even matter. A superstar fell right into our lap. The Wizards took Tre Johnson at number 6 overall, and he's going to be the next star here in our nation's capital. This is Locked On Wizards.
You are Locked On Wizards, your daily Washington Wizards podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
DC family, this is Locked On Wizards, where you're part of our family. We thank you for making Locked On Wizards your first listen every day. Part of the Locked On Network, it's your team every day. Alongside DC Sports content creating savant and credentialed media member for the Wizards, Abdullah Ayubi, I'm Ben Strober. I cover all things DC Sports for 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980. First of all, big shout out to everybody that joined in with us on the Locked On Wizards live stream for the coverage of the NBA draft first round. We had over 2,000 total people in the stream, 300 concurrently, and so many of you that we could shout on here. Leave a comment down below in the video if you were part of the live stream yesterday. We had a blast with y'all. First things first, Abdullah, our guy, Tre Johnson, is a Washington Wizards. They get him at number 6 overall. Ace Bailey nearly fell into the Wizards' lap. He goes 5 to Utah. But our first reaction, over the moon, that a guy with such high offensive upside, somebody that is going to stretch the floor for this Wizards team for years to come. Tre Johnson is a Washington Wizard.
Man, this is a W draft just off of that. Going to this draft, it was either Ace Bailey or Tre Johnson. The fact that you land Tre Johnson when he was considered to be at some point drafted by Philly mocked, or at most he wasn't going to get past Utah. But the ability to land a guy with his talent, 3-level scorer, a mix of, I always say, of Cam Thomas and a peak Bradley Beal. What he did in the SEC last year was just phenomenal, carrying that Texas team, all of the pressure that was on him, the shooting splits. You put all that together, you really have a playmaker, a shot creator, a guy at 6'6" who has that frame to be a decent defender. And again, I'm not taking a shot at Jeremiah Fears, but that was just the one thing of being 6'1", 6'2". It just was one thing that I was concerned about if we had take Fears at 6. But that wasn't the situation. You get Tre Johnson at 6, even when you didn't have the most luck out of that lottery. W pick by Will Dawkins at pick 6.
One thing that sticks out to me is how the Wizards handled this draft process, leading them to getting Tre Johnson in the draft. One thing that Johnson cited when he spoke to the media in New York pre-draft was that he really enjoyed his visit with the Wizards because it felt like a college environment. It felt like a college visit for him where he got to come into the building, meet everyone within the organization, players, coaches, front office staff. They had food put out for him. He said it really just felt like an environment that was inclusive in a place that he wanted to be. And you could see it on his face. Did you see my man cheesing when he was taken by the Wizards? Yeah, you're getting picked in the NBA, and it's a dream come true for anyone to be a first-round draft choice in the NBA. But his smile told me more to the picture that he is excited to be in our nation's capital and be part of an upswing and become the next superstar here in D.C. Another thing that sticks out to me from this process, per report from our guy Chase Hughes at Monumental Sports Network, Tre Johnson said that Wizards general manager Will Dawkins showed him clips of him taking plays off during his visit to D.C., and Johnson said that stuck with him. It motivated him to be great. It motivated him to realize what kind of effort is going to be expected of him in a Wizards uniform, because a lot of people have cited that defensive tendencies are something they're unsure about with a prospect like Tre Johnson. He's got the size to be a good defender. Can they get the effort from it? And with all that being said, I think they will. I think Brian Keefe, Will Dawkins, I think everybody in place in the building has what it takes to mold Tre Johnson into an incredible two-way player. I'm just amazed at what he was able to do in the SEC last year, to average 20 points per game and will that Texas team to the NCAA tournament and a stacked SEC conference, shoot nearly 40% from beyond the arc. This is a dude that is going to score the ball so well at the next level. You pair him alongside Bub Carrington, who we expect to have a much larger role this year. See him improve as a playmaker, distribute even more. And with all the pieces that Washington has coming together, we're going to get even more into Will Riley, who was taken with the Wizards' 23rd pick in this draft. The Wizards traded back from 18 to get to 21. Or rather, that's 21, excuse me, not 23. I have to update that. But
It was a long live stream.
Yeah, that's a long live stream. But Will Riley at the 21st pick, the Wizards get him, and we'll have to break down what his role will look like with Washington. But Tre Johnson, man, I am just so over the moon about what he is going to mean to this Wizards franchise and how this guy fell to us. I didn't even think there was a possibility that there'd be a world where Ace Bailey or Tre Johnson would be available for the Wizards 3 weeks ago. But here we are. Tre Johnson is a Wizard.
It's truly a dream come true here in Washington. You get a guy who can be that potential superstar here in Washington that you just really haven't had here in so long. A guy that can put the city on his shoulders when the lights are the brightest, who can show up. And I think Tre Johnson can be the guy. And he showed it at Texas, playing, like you mentioned, in toughest conference in the SEC. And on top of that, he's learning under CJ McCollum. If he's not traded, and presumably he's going to stay here in Washington for at least up until the trade deadline. You learn from a guy who similar skill set, I guess you could say, when it comes to scoring ability. CJ can score at all three phases. So I love this pick from Will Dawkins. Tre Johnson is just a guy who I just didn't think would be there. I thought he was a lock at top 5, but the board fell, and it does suck missing on Ace Bailey. But maybe, who knows, down the line, Ben, that concerns of him being the guy that wants to take all these shots. Maybe that could have been maybe Washington could have dodged a bullet. I know it's easy to say this now because we didn't draft him, but maybe that could have altered the development of these young guys here in Washington. But you get a guy in Tre Johnson who, like you mentioned, wants to learn from his mistakes and is hungry. And you just love to see it. This regime being able to land a guy like him it's going to be remarkable. We're going to look back upon this a couple of years saying, how the heck was Tre Johnson not a top 3 pick?
I think you're exactly right. I think all the tools are there for him as an offensive player, especially at the next level. One thing that I love so much about our guy, Tre Johnson, is his big shot-making ability. Time and time again, in February or March, down the stretch, whenever it was at Texas, he was making big shots in big moments. And that's something that Washington desperately will need in a future where they are competing to win meaningful basketball games. I know that's not going to be the case necessarily next year, but you're going to develop Johnson to be a guy that comes through for you in the clutch. You need a guy that wants the ball in his hands in those big moments, and Johnson fits the mold perfectly for what the Wizards are able to do with them. Unfortunately, here in night number 1, the Wizards weren't able to find an elite big man that we might see pair alongside, working the screen and roll with a guy like Tre Johnson or Bub Carrington, and also just play alongside Alex Sarr. But Wizards will actually have the 43rd pick in tomorrow's draft that comes over in the trade that was executed with Utah. And that'll be interesting to note tomorrow if the Wizards do go after big. But back on Tre Johnson, well, we still have the time to chat about our new guard here in D.C. and what he means. I just loved how he was throughout this entire process, and how much he cited how much he wanted to be in D.C. because I think that's such an important part. You had him, Ace Bailey, other guys involved in this process, even Will Riley, who said that his workout with the Wizards was one of the most competitive ones he had gone throughout the whole pre-draft process. It shows that the front office is doing things right now. They are handling things the way they should when it comes to the pre-draft process. And look, the front office hit on all 3 of its first round draft picks last year. And we need to keep that in mind when we talk about the draft this year. I have full confidence that Tre Johnson and Will Riley are going to be very successful players going forward for this Wizards franchise. And now also amassing some even more draft capital. The Wizards now have 17 second-round picks through 2032, which is just unbelievable.
Yeah, that is a lot of second-round picks. And we talked about it earlier during the live stream where you could potentially – you see a lot of teams use second-round picks, about 4 or 5, to acquire that superstar. So down the line, when the Wizards are eventually contending and trying to make a playoff push and they need to make that move that can put them over the edge and compete in the Eastern Conference, you use those second-round picks. And Will Dawkins, again, being able to acquire a guy in Will Riley, and maybe they thought that, hey, he's still going to be there at 21, so we might as well add a second-round pick. And I love it. Still being able to add Tre Johnson at 6 just makes his draft so freaking sweet because, again, Ben, I just didn't think he would be there at 6. I didn't think he was going to pass Utah, but the draft gods helped us, and he fell in Will Dawkins' lap. And as a Wizards fan, how can you not be optimistic right now?
Tre Johnson, our guy, is coming home. He is a Washington Wizard They get him at 6 overall. With the 21st overall pick, the Wizards selected Will Riley. Let's break down what he brings to the table when we come back on Locked On Wizards. There's nothing like stepping into your own outdoor space and feeling you've escaped to a personal oasis. If you are wanting to update your patio this season, Wayfair has made it easy to turn it into a space that feels like yours. It's comfortable, stylish, and ready for summer. Wayfair is everything you need to level up your outdoor space. Conversation sets, outdoor bars, fire pits, hot tubs, gazebos, and yes, even the perfect string lights to set the vibe. It's like giving your backyard that resort feel without the resort price tag. I recently picked up a new outdoor dining set, got some modern lounge chairs, and they completely transformed my patio. My style leans clean and modern, so I love being able to filter and find exactly what fit my space and my budget. That's the most important part. Don't wait. Make your outdoor space your dream oasis today with Wayfair and enjoy it all summer long. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop a huge outdoor selection. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Welcome back, Locked On Wizards Nation. Ben Strober alongside Abdullah Ayubi, and we are here post first round of the NBA draft. The Wizards selected Tre Johnson with the 6th overall pick, and then after trading back from 18, the Wizards take Will Riley, a wing player out of Illinois, measures in at 6'8" and 185 pounds, has a really slight frame, which is the concern with maybe what impact he brings to this Wizards team, because kind of has the similar build, similar positional value as a guy like Keyshawn George, but maybe the defensive concerns are a little bit there because the slighter frame. However, this dude can score the ball. He can score at all 3 levels, has a very consistent shooting stroke, and was able to fill it in from pretty much anywhere on the floor for this Illinois team. He was expanded to become a starter for the Fighting Illini as the season went on, and he really shined in his moments and became a one-and-done player. Abdullah, I just kind of wanted to get your first thoughts right here on Will Riley heading to our nation's capital.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting because I thought that they would have targeted a guy like Ace Newell or Danny Wolf. Those are potential targets out there, but you go with a guy in Riley who the thin frame is a little concerning, but I think maybe he can put on some weight. His scoring ability is definitely something that you have to monitor. I think he can be really good off the dribble, shooting wise. I just think the lack of front court depth that you have for its center position was really concerning, and I think you have to tomorrow in the second round address it and get a big. There was the idea of trading up to get Thomas Sorber, Derek Queen, Common Malawach, and maybe because of last year's draft, the idea seemed plausible, but you definitely have to realize that this year's draft was just going to cost more because the draft class was just very much stronger compared to last year. So I like the pick. I don't hate it. I don't love it. We'll just have to see. We'll have to see come summertime how he does. You brought up the fact that he kind of has a similar frame to Keyshawn George. I would say when it comes to his weight, maybe like AJ Johnson, who I hope a guy Will Riley can be very, very athletic, but we'll just have to see. And again, Wolf Dawkins, just off of last year, being able to hit on all 3 draft picks, on top of that, adding AJ Johnson, I have confidence in, even if it wasn't Will Riley, whoever it is, that this is the right guy here. And he just seems like, I saw a report talking about how he mentioned how he is always going to work. He's never going to have to be able to push to play basketball. He just loves the game of basketball. So it just goes back to being an A-plus culture fit.
A little more background on him. He averaged around 13 points per game in his freshman season with the Fighting Illini in the Big Ten Conference. Some pretty stiff competition there. I think he fits the mold well. I think there really is a lot of upside and potential to a guy like Will Riley. And we've seen a couple of different writers that think he could be a guy that ends up being the steal of the draft. I saw one report that indicated that he thought he was a top 10 talent in this draft, but had fallen so far because of his slight frame. And if that is indeed the case, that'll be really intriguing for the Wizards going forward. You're almost going to get to a problem at one point where you have too many talented guys at the guard/wing position, but the Wizards
Which is crazy to say, Ben, because at one point we didn't have any talent there.
We're just stacking up assets. And, you know, I feel like I should probably, I'll give the full details of the trade. And I didn't do it earlier because I'm a terrible host. But anyways, Utah traded up to get the 18th pick with the Washington Wizards. The Wizards got the 21st pick, the number 43 pick, which will be used now tonight when this comes out here in the second round of the draft, and then 2 future second rounders in 2031 and 2032. So that's 17 second round picks amassed for the Wizards going forward here. And I think the NBA has kind of just become a hub where teams will stack up as many picks, whether they're first, second rounders, pick swaps, and use those to eventually trade for more all-star caliber players whenever the time comes. It almost makes me wonder if the Wizards have a plan going forward when they are ready to compete, maybe about 2 years from now, if they use some of the firepower they have to go out and trade for an elite big man to pair alongside Alex Sarr. Because it still remains to be seen what the Wizards do tonight in the second round of the draft, whether they get a big player to put alongside Sarr, but it's a lot tougher to bank on a second round pick having super high impact. I know Tristan Vucevic has been a guy that has been kind of an anomaly for Wizards basketball. I think really the only other second round pick in the eras before that had any meaning here in Washington was Thomas Satoransky, who was a second round pick back in 2012, which
Man, that's a pull, Ben.
I didn't even realize he was a second round pick, but he had a couple of pretty good years here before he was traded away. But it's tough to get real great value and stellar play at a second round picks. So I feel like the Wizards absolutely have a plan going forward. I think Will Dawkins has made another chess move right here with getting Will Riley. I think this is a guy that is slept on throughout the draft process, and I'm really interested to see how the Wizards utilize him going forward.
Yeah, and going back to the whole youth movement, I think it's just amazing. This is something that we've been emphasizing. Tre Johnson, 19, Will Riley, 19, Bub Carrington, 19, Bilal Coulibaly, 20, Alex Sarr, 20, AJ Johnson, 20, Keyshawn George, 21, Tristan Vucevic, 22, Kobe Jones, 23. Will Dawkins is literally saying what his actions and words all align, and I freaking love it. I think a guy like Will Riley, especially if Bilal Coulibaly doesn't take that year 3 jump offensively, maybe Will Riley comes in and gives that offensive spark. A guy who, if Tre Johnson's getting a lot of the loads and needs someone else to get those touches, a guy that can create his own shot, potentially a guy like Riley could do that.
All right, so the Wizards have taken in the first round Tre Johnson and Will Riley. We've given our thoughts on what they'll bring to the table. However, the Wizards don't get a big in this draft. I know there was a lot of people interested in trading up to get either Derek Queen, Thomas Sorber, or somebody else at some point in this draft. The Wizards also passed on a couple of other centers that win the first round, such as Asul Newell. Well, he's more of a forward. Danny Wolf, another guy that went late in the first round, the Wizards passed on. Is this a problem for the Wizards, or is there any reason to be concerned or frustrated that they did not take a big tonight? We'll get into that next here on Locked On Wizards. When I found out SKIMS was making underwear for men, I was intrigued. I've heard so much about their quality from friends and family, so I had to give it a try. Let me tell you, it lives up to the hype. I've always had issues with underwear, fit, comfort, or just finding the right style for me. SKIMS changed all of that. Their men's line offers something for everyone from boxer briefs to classic briefs, all designed with a perfect balance of comfort and style. I tried the SKIMS boxers that we had, the boxer briefs, and I'm hooked. And these are perfect for all my active lifestyle. They move with me. They never lose shape and stay in place all day. Whether I'm working out or just running errands, they're the most comfortable and reliable underwear I've ever owned. Plus, the lightweight material feels amazing. It's almost like you're wearing nothing at all. If I had to give my personal preference, the Stretch 5 boxer brief is really good. I work out 5 days a week, so these are perfect for working out and doing whatever activities you need, whether you need the underwear to not get in your way. I shop SKIMS Mens at skims.com. I let them know we sent you. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select Locked On Wizards in the drop-down menu that follows. Welcome back to Locked On Wizards. Final segment.
Very interesting ad read, Ben. Sorry to cut you off.
I know. I was a little bit I'm tired. I'm really tired. We were streaming for 3.5 hours. It's been a long night, so forgive me, everybody. But yeah, shout out to SKIMS, man. Go check them out. The Wizards did not take a center tonight. They passed on a couple of guys possible. They didn't make an aggressive move to trade up and get a center, even though we had heard reports that we had believed the Wizards would expect to be aggressive and try to move up from 18. And we didn't see the Wizards make any trades, but going back, they moved back from 18 to 21. Also acquired the 43rd pick, which will be used in the second round. And then 2 more future second rounders. Abdullah, do you have any concern with the Wizards not picking up a big in this first round of the draft?
To be quite frank, yes. I think, especially since if Alex Sarr does deal with injury, knocking on wood here, but you got Tristan Vucevic, Alex Sarr, Rashawn Holmes. Maybe you can put Keyshawn George at the 4, but I thought you needed to get a center. And I understand Thomas Sorber, Derek Queen, AC Newell, who's a forward. Maybe that fit wouldn't be meshed well with Alex Sarr because you think Alex Sarr could play that 4 position. But I think you could put Alex Sarr at the 5 and Common Malawach. You would have had to given up a lot of draft capital, and maybe the Wizards just didn't meet that criteria. At the end of the day, this is going to be, especially since we lack the offensive defensive, offensive rebounding. We've been bottom 5 in the paint, just getting scored on a lot. And you need a big man present in if Alex Sarr doesn't take that year 2 jump when it comes to being aggressive defensively. He can be that rim protector, but he needs to get better at it. And we just can't get bullied in the paint. It's going to be frustrating to see another year where the Wizards are just getting out rebounded and out bullied in the paint every night. And I thought maybe getting a big in this draft could at least help that concern in some way, but we'll just have to wait another year. And I think obviously you're going to have to take a big tomorrow. Not going to make an immediate impact right away because second round is just very hard to get a big man unless you're the Nuggets and somehow land Nikola Jokic during a Taco Bell commercial. But that's just an anomaly. So we'll have to see. Be patient, Wizards fans. You landed Tre Johnson. You landed Will Riley. This team definitely got better offensively, but defensively, paint presence is just something that we're going to have to see. And Will Dawkins is definitely going to answer a lot of questions after this draft.
Yeah, well, he's going to answer the questions that come with after the trade that took place the day before, where the Wizards trade away Jordan Poole and Sadiq Bey. In return, they get C.J. McCollum, Kelly Olynyk, and future second-round pick as well. And then also, of course, ask the question, why no big here in the first round of the 2025 NBA draft? Does it feel like a missed opportunity? For me, I'm okay with it because I'm under the impression that after maybe guys like Malawach and Queen were off the board and the Wizards didn't feel like they were willing to give up what it costed to move up. It might have been expensive to move up to try to get Queen or try to move up and get Thomas Sorber, who went to Oklahoma City at 15. It's like the rich get richer,
man.
Rich get richer. But I'm starting to wonder if Dawkins and co. maybe weren't so high on who was available remaining, because I know they'd certainly worked out with plenty of those guys, met with plenty of these guys throughout the draft process. Maybe none of the guys available for the Wizards at 21 were centers or big players that they were high on. Clearly, they weren't. They were ready to go best player available in their mind, in their big board. Because if they needed a center that bad and they were going to take a center, they were hard-pressed to do it, they would have taken one right there. Instead, they go Will Riley, a player with tremendous upside on the offensive side of the basketball, has more of a slight frame. But this shows you that this is a player that Dawkins, Travis Schlenk, and Michael Winger were extremely high on. And I'm okay because I'm given the full authority to Will Dawkins in this Wizards front office to go out there and cook because, like you said, they hit on 3 draft picks last year in the first round. And I think from the majority of what we've seen for the Wizards drafting with this new front office, they've been very successful at not just drafting, but also developing guys as well, whether they get put on 2-way contracts or they just make an instant impact in the NBA. I think that's the exact kind of thing that we can see from the Wizards right here. So yeah, it's a little bit frustrating that we don't have a top of the line big to pair alongside Alex Sarr just yet. But I'm not saying it's not going to happen in the future at some point. I just think it's going to be one of those waiting game things. This Wizards team still has a ways to go. I'm very happy with what we were able to accomplish tonight in the first round of the draft. Tre Johnson, man, I still can't believe that he's a Wizard right now. I'm so fired up for that.
I can't emphasize it enough. The fact that you landed Tre Johnson at pick 6, at one point people were mocking him to 3 to Philly. It's great. It's a surreal feeling that Wizards fans just won't understand now, but come summer league time and come those first regular season games where you see how Tre Johnson, how he plays and how his career will be, it's going to be exciting. You just have to be patient and just wait a little bit.
That's exactly right. I think there's so many different ways we can look at what the Wizards did tonight because they've been a team that's so focused defensively over the past couple years. Under Will Dawkins in the new regime, they've fit this mold where they want to build a really elite defense, great individuals, great team defense. But today they focused on the offensive side of the ball, and we certainly did need guys We need players that can get you buckets. You got to score to win in this league. Defense is so important, but the Wizards put more of an emphasis on offense tonight, and I'm not mad about it at all. I am so excited to get a player as good, as talented, as clutch as Tre Johnson. I think he is going to be a star here in Washington.
Him and Bub Carrington, man, that's going to be a very, very interesting backcourt, and it's going to be exciting to watch. And I legit can't wait to see how just him coming in a Capital One Arena. I just feel like from his pre-draft interviews that he's just such a, outside of being a great basketball player, I think he's just such a good guy, a fun personality. And I think his way of carrying himself is going to mesh well here in the nation's capital.
All right, Tre Johnson and Will Riley, the Wizards' 2 first-round picks here in the 2025 NBA draft. We've been able to break it down for you. Shout out to everyone who is watching this podcast that comes out here the morning of the day of the second round. The Wizards picked 43 today. And then once again, shout out to everyone who was in the live stream with us. 3.5 hours of fun here on Locked On Wizards. We had a blast breaking down all the action that took place. And you know, we've got to crash here. We've got to get ready for tomorrow.
One last thing, Dan, before we crash. What's up with the commercials before the Wizards picks, man? 3 for 3.
I can't believe that. We're gonna have to do a separate episode just talking about that, because we said it from the beginning. They'll definitely go to commercial before a pick. They did it at 6, and then it happened again when we were supposed to pick at 18, and then the pick got traded, and they did it again at 21. I don't even understand it. It's just DC sports, man. They always disrespect us like this and send it to commercial because they don't want to talk about the Wizards, I guess. Well, that's what we're here for. We're going to talk about the Wizards, and we are going to do it every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We want to thank everyone who tuned in with us here on Locked On Wizards today. You're getting your first listen in following the first round of the draft. Wizards fans, wake up. We got a star in Tre Johnson. Thank you for making Locked On Wizards your first listen today. For your second, find the Locked On NBA podcast where there is no offseason. Doug, Matt, and Hayes keep you up to date on contract negotiations, rumors, and everything you need to know for the most informed NBA fan. Find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks to everyone who tuned in with us tonight. For my co-host, Abdullah Ayubi, I'm Ben Strober. We'll see you in the next one. Wizards got a star.